take you through this morning's papers. Let's start with the Sunday Times. The Sunday Times is slightly behind. It says Assad's regime hanging by a thread. I think that's an understatement as rebels reach Damascus. The latest on that is that it does look like Assad has now fled, that Damascus has fallen as well. Rebel forces claim they have captured the capital Damascus and ousted Syrian President Bashar al-Assad after his 24-year rule. We'll talk more about that at 8 o'clock. Let's move on to the front page of the Sunday Telegraph. Zelensky endorsing Trump's call to end the war. We were talking about this earlier. This is the ceremony at Notre Dame yesterday. Vladimir Zelensky has endorsed Donald Trump's drive to end the war in Ukraine as soon as possible. This is really quite a U-turn from Zelensky. He's obviously aware that Trump is the president-elect. Trump says he will end this war on day one. He is now keen to engage with the president-elect's strategy since his election victory. Now, what is on the table? It looks like, according to the copy, that he is open to ceding 4 eastern regions, which are currently occupied by Russia, in exchange for an end to the hot phase. Trump is also looking at considering an 800-mile buffer zone between Ukraine and Russia, which would be patrolled by European soldiers. But interestingly, no US soldiers involved at all. Again, this kind of goes back to his big statement about Syria as well, not our war. This is so we're going to see a massive shift in US foreign policy.
Yes, but I mean, this is Trump 2.0. We know that he's all about America first, and you know,
and actually rightly,
and the rest of the world later. Well, potentially, but I do think the world is poorer for having a weaker, more insular America. Whether you agree with lots of things that go on in the States, you know, certainly domestic policies, there are plenty I'm not a big fan of, and foreign ones as well. But I do think we almost need a bastion of Western liberal, you know, democracy in the form of a strong America. And I do worry about this. I do think that this situation is slightly different. I think if you ask the people, I think they did a poll recently of people in Ukraine, and I think it's an even split between a third would concede a lot, a third would concede a little, and a third want to keep fighting. But I think from the sense that I get from reading the reports from people there, they're tired. And you can imagine it's just tiring. They want to go back to having
some semblance of life. And
Zelensky's popularity ratings have started to dwindle, and I do think that, yes, I mean, I can't even imagine what it must be like living like that. So, you know, but those are two separate issues, I think. And one, I think this war does, of course, we need to find solutions to wars, but I think that American kind of protectionism, American first, is a concern for the world.
I mean, it's interesting, particularly when there is no sort of European unity either. France in terrible trouble. Michel Barnier couldn't happen to a nicer chap, as I said. France in turmoil, Germany in turmoil, and of course, huge instability around the world. Let's move on to the front page of The Observer. Their headline: Syrian rebels encircle capital amidst denials that Assad has fled. We now know that is incorrect. This is a big story, as far as I can see. Million skip meals in winter fuel benefit crisis. The row this is over the government's decision to slash winter fuel payments is set to be reignited after new evidence has revealed that more than 1 million older people are skipping meals because of financial concerns. I think the government should be ashamed of itself. The new study also suggested that millions are cutting down their heating. I get it, I totally get it, and people are terrified about their bills, but what we're going to see, and I've seen it, elderly people not eating, not putting the heating on, guess what happens? They end up in hospital. There are lots of nasty bugs going around, and all we do is just complicate the situation and make it worse. I just think this is a really good example of not joined-up government thinking. I'll stop my rant. Sunday Express. Another really good story, this. Don't abandon Britain's lost boys. Britain is in danger of abandoning a whole generation of boys to live a bleak life without hope, with destructive consequences for the nation. It's feared the UK will face more rioting, higher prison numbers because of lost boys. They are turning a blind eye to boys' educational failings. This is Lawrence Dallaglio, the former England rugby captain, has called for society to stop treating boys and young men as the lowest of the low. I think it's a really strong story.
I can't comment on how young men and boys are treated.
Particularly young white boys, actually. There's a real problem with educational attainment, aspiration.
I mean, yes, I agree with you on that. But I'm trying to think what is the cause for that. The thing that worries me, and I agree with what Lawrence Delalio is saying in terms of if this is happening and young boys are being left, I think where I see this play out is on social media, where they're being attracted to this kind of hyper-masculinity, alpha males, etc. There's where I feel a bit of, if men are feeling, or boys are feeling a bit emasculated, if they're feeling like there's no hope for them. I mentioned earlier about the economic situation in Syria. As trite as it almost sounds, where there is economic difficulty, you do tend to get things like riots. We saw it, in the summer, I believe, in this country. When was it? 2012 or 2011? When was it? The riots in the summer. I do think that economics plays a big part in that. And
I think unfairness actually plays a big part. If people feel that the society is weighted against them, it's unfair. I think the levels of immigration are playing into that as well. You've got disenfranchisement. You've got lack of male role models. I think it's a huge toxic.
The same argument was levelled at young boys being attracted by terrorism.
Yes.
It's the same argument.
I agree. And this is the launch by the Centre for Social Justice is launching the Lost Boys project to identify how boys can have a better start of life in Britain. The Mail on Sunday fired fake dementia to dodge sex abuse probe. Says his son Mohammed Al-Fayed evaded prosecution by tricking police into believing he had dementia. This is according to one of his sons. This is Omar Fayed, 37, said the deception allowed his billionaire father to escape justice over his alleged sexual crimes, now thought to involve dozens of women. This is a quote. He got off the hook on the grounds he was mentally incapacitated, Omar tells the Mail on Sunday. He went on further to say he didn't have dementia. He was really sharp as a tack. The Mirror front page, Jungle has saved my Colleen. The impact of the Wagatha Christie trial on Colleen Rooney broke her mum's heart. Colette McLaughlin says the family lost Colleen during the libel case, but I'm a Celeb has restored her girl's zest for life. And then two papers with the same headline. This is the Sun on Sunday first. Prem ace horror smash. Prem star Michail Antonio had to be cut out of a terrible car crash from his £260,000 Ferrari yesterday. Horrific road smash. Fans prayed for the West Ham legend, 34. Shocking photos showed the mangled wreckage of his supercar. Apparently he hit trees at Thaden Boy in Essex.
Is an extraordinary photo, and Michail
he's lucky to be alive.
When I saw it, I said that I can't believe it. I just cannot believe it. But he had a car crash actually in 2019 where he was driving, I believe, in London, slipped actually, the same sort of weather conditions, I understand, and he was actually talking not too long ago about how difficult it was to get insurance on his. And he was saying for, I think it was an Audi A3, he'd have to get £10,000 insurance. He said he'd rather get the souped up one for £20,000 insurance than not. And you think, oh, please, I mean, I don't know what happened.
No, none of us
but
do.
The weather conditions were awful, and it is a reminder, to drive extra carefully in these absolutely awful conditions.
Yeah, well said, well said. Of course, very changeable conditions as well. We wish him well, and the Daily Star also the same picture, Antonio Miracle. I think that sums it up rather nicely.